Okay, picture this for a second. You go in for some minor medical thing, something routine. You trust everyone, the whole setup. You figure you'll wake up, head home. But then you just don't. You fall into this coma. No explanation. Irreversible. Just gone. A ghost in a hospital bed. That idea, that feeling of being totally vulnerable right where you're supposed to be safe. Well, that's right at the heart of the book we're getting into today.
Yeah, it really taps into that deep-seated fear, doesn't it? What if the place for healing is actually where the danger is?
Exactly. So, welcome everyone. We are taking apart Robin Cook's classic medical thriller, Coma, that first came out way back in 1977. What we want to do today is really unpack the key ideas in this book, get to know the characters, and wrestle with some pretty, well, frankly, terrifying questions it brings up about trust, ethics, and what might be going on behind the scenes in the medical world.
It was definitely a book that hit a nerve at the time, all this rapidly advancing medical tech and the worry that maybe the rules, the ethics weren't keeping up.
Right. And before we jump right into Cook's world, just a quick note. The kind of thinking we're doing here, breaking down a story, finding the deeper meaning, that's very much the focus over on our YouTube channel, Mindful Moments. It uses AI to analyze books, aiming to spark that kind of reflection and critical thought. Sort of fits with what we're trying to do here today.
Mm-hmm. It's all about encouraging you, the listener, to look past the surface, which is precisely what the main character in Coma has to do, just to survive, really.
Okay, so let's dive in. The core mystery in Coma is pretty stark. You've got this string of patients at Memorial Hospital falling into comas. No reason. They go in for minor stuff, a D&C like Nancy Greenlee, maybe knee surgery and appendectomy, things they should recover from easily. But they don't recover. They just drift off. And the charts, they show nothing obvious. It's completely baffling.
Right. These are supposed to be low-risk procedures. And then, boom, catastrophic outcome, irreversible. For doctors trained to find a physical cause for everything, these cases are deeply disturbing because, well, they just don't fit any standard diagnosis. The book really emphasizes these aren't just, unfortunate complications. They're like invisible medical tragedies.
And this is all unfolding at Memorial Hospital, which is presented as this top-tier, respected teaching hospital. Busy place. Cook really paints a picture of the environment, doesn't he? You get the feel of the ORs, that intense focus, the sterile field, but also the human stuff, like the anesthesiology residents, Dr. Billing may be super confident, living by his checklist, or the surgeons who can be, let's say, a bit temperamental, like Dr. Cowley.
And then you have these contrasting figures, like Walters, the old orderly. He's just kind of there, shuffling around, pushing gurneys, coughing, seems worn down. He represents this other, almost forgotten layer of the hospital. And the atmosphere changes too, right? The OR is tense, efficient. Then the surgical lounge is quiet, almost weirdly calm. Cook uses all these little details to build this really complex sense of place. It feels real.
Yeah, it does. And into this setting comes Susan Wheeler. She's a third-year med student, sharp, smart, determined. The book describes her quite vividly. And what jumps out right away is her position. She's a woman in what the book makes very clear is a man's world, medically speaking back then anyway. Most of the doctors, the professors, the bosses, they're men. And that adds this whole other layer of pressure, of skepticism she constantly has to deal with.
Mm-hmm. And she starts out with that, typical med student self-doubt, feeling like a greenhorn, as the book says, among all these experts. But underneath that initial insecurity, she has this really powerful core belief, what the book actually calls her positive theory. It's this conviction that if she just investigates systematically, gathers the information, uses the scientific method, she can find the answers. It's not just wishful thinking. It's a real belief in facts, in data, in analysis to solve even really mysterious problems.
And that positive theory, that becomes her engine, doesn't it? Her reason for doing this shifts from just like academic interest to something really personal when she actually sees these coma patients. Seeing Nancy Greenlee in the ICU, Cook describes her as a casualty of medicine, a victim of technology, or learning about Mr. Berman, another simple case gone wrong. Suddenly, these aren't just statistics in a chart. They're real people suffering, and it demands an explanation. Her first goal is just scientific. Figure out why. What's causing these comas?
But yeah, that scientific approach immediately smacks right into a huge wall of resistance, getting the information she needs. Turns out it's anything but simple.
Her first few tries are just incredibly frustrating. She wants to look at patient charts, basic stuff for any investigation, right? But she runs into all this red tape, these rules that seem designed to hide information, not share it. She tries using the hospital's big computer system, the one that's supposed to have all the data, but nope. There's the gatekeeper, this pudgy guy at the information desk, demanding authorization for every little thing. The very tools she thinks will help her are actually keeping her locked out.
And that's when you really feel the institutional pushback. It's not just one or two difficult people, it's the whole system kind of closing ranks.
Yeah.
People in charge start dismissing her worries. Like Dr. Nelson, he basically waves her off, saying she's naive to focus on a few cases. He points out how many people die in a big hospital anyway, implying her idea of a pattern is just, well, idiosyncratic. Yeah.
Idiosyncratic. And then there's Dr. McCleary, the neurologist. You'd think he'd be curious about unexplained brain issues, right? But nope. He just shuts her down completely, tells her flat out he doesn't need a student helping him review charts. It's not just that they won't help, it's like they're actively trying to stop her from looking. It really shows how established experts can sometimes resist stuff that challenges the status quo, especially if it makes the institution look bad.
And that resistance goes way up when she tries to make it official, tries to get proper authorization. She talks to Dr. Chapman, and that ends up with Dean Orrin basically kicking her out of Memorial Hospital. Her professional welcome is terminated. That's not just bureaucracy. That's a really clear message from the top. Stop asking questions. We don't want you looking into this. The institution is protecting itself.
And it's not just the institution. Susan also runs into these tricky personal situations that get in her way, especially with Dr. Mark Bellows. Bellows starts off seeming like the typical ambitious resident,
Yeah.
focused on his career. He even tells her he has more to lose than she does if they stir things up. Really shows the pressure cooker environment.
Right. And the book is pretty direct about the sexism Susan faces, too. Bellows himself admits he initially saw her just as a woman, not really as a serious colleague. And then you've got guys like Dr. Harris, an anesthesiologist, who apparently just doesn't like women in medicine, period. He actively tries to mess up her surgical rotation. So on top of everything else, she's fighting just to be taken seriously in this very male environment.
But Bellows, he's not totally against her, even with his career focus. You see these little moments of support starting to emerge. Maybe it's his own worries about things, like that drug locker mix-up potentially involving Walters. Or maybe he just starts to genuinely worry about Susan. He does give her some chart info early on, tries to help after Nancy Greenlee crashes, even covers for her playfully when she skips rounds. Their whole dynamic gets more complicated. He goes from being wary to showing real concern as he starts to see the danger she's actually in.
And that danger ramps up fast. It goes from getting stonewalled and facing prejudice to, well, actual physical threats. Getting kicked out of the hospital doesn't stop her, but it does make her a target.
Yes, suddenly she's being followed, actively stalked. The tension really builds until that horrible scene in the subway tunnel. This guy in a dark coat is chasing her. She trips on the tracks, catches her boot, gets hurt. It's a desperate escape. And later, they identify the attacker as D'Ambrosio. So it's clear someone isn't just trying to hide information anymore. They want her silenced, for good.
Mm-hmm. And that physical threat hits this absolutely terrifying peak in the anatomy lab. D'Ambrosio corners her there. I mean, what a setting, right? Skeletons hanging around, jars with preserved organs. It's already creepy. Then the danger just explodes.
It gets truly nightmarish when she finds that big freezer door.
Yeah.
And inside, oh God, bodies hanging from meat hooks, frozen solid. Cook describes them like an army of ghouls. Just frozen human bodies. Her escape is just raw survival, scrambling over these frozen forms, using the horror, the smell of embalming fluid to stun D'Ambrosio for a second so she can run. It's incredibly visceral. Shows you just how far someone will go to stop her finding out the truth.
But even after being cut off, threatened, attacked, Susan doesn't stop. That positive theory, that belief she can find the truth if she just keeps digging, it pushes her to look outside the hospital now that the official routes are closed and, well, lethal.
Which leads her to the Jefferson Institute. Bellows had mentioned it offhand, said it was this really modern chronic care place, took patients with complex needs, like coma patients. So Susan thinks, okay, maybe if I look at the patients there, the ones transferred from Memorial, maybe that's where the pattern is, the link nobody could see inside the hospital.
Her arrival there is unsettling. It's all shiny and modern, sterile, almost too perfect. Her guide, this woman Michelle, is polite but kind of evasive. Her answers feel scripted. And the security is intense. Susan has to leave her coat, her bag at the front desk. It feels very controlled. You get this feeling right away that something's off beneath that polished surface.
But the real shock, the absolute horror, comes when Michelle shows her the patients. She walks into this huge room, massive, temperature controlled, and there they are, hanging from the ceiling, suspended by wires attached to rings drilled into their bones, their skulls, over 100 naked bodies just hanging there horizontally. The description. grotesque, horizontal sleeping marionettes. It's just devastatingly powerful and so disturbing.
It completely dehumanizes them. They're not patients anymore. They're things, resources. Susan's suspicions just flare up. Michelle tells her there are no operating rooms there, that everything's done on the ward. But Susan remembers seeing floor plans. She knows that's a lie.
And she keeps pushing, slips away, follows a hunch, and finds it. A hidden OR. She can hear surgeons working. And then she sees the tanks, these big plexiglass containers. With perfused human organs inside a heart, a kidney kept alive outside the body, there's this distinct pumping sound.
And that's it. The horrifying truth just snaps into place. Jefferson isn't about pear, it's an organ farm. Sophisticated, yes, but absolutely monstrous. These coma patients, the ones from Memorial, were deliberately put into coma so they could be kept alive here, harvested for a black market in organs. That's the motive. Not a mistake, not an accident. A calculated crime fueled by greed and this unbelievably twisted idea of resource management.
Finding that out.
Sure.
It throws Susan into this desperate flight. She has to get out of there. Manages to climb onto a truck roof, ends up freezing in the early morning out by the Haymarket. But even then, terrified, exhausted, her mind is racing. Who can she trust? Who can help expose this nightmare? She decides to call Dr. Stark. She thinks of him as this surgical legend, right?
Yeah.
A genius. Surely he would be horrified. He'd want to blow the whistle on this.
So she arranges to meet him, goes to his office, which sounds impressive, almost like a museum, and Stark seems receptive at first, listens calmly while she spills everything, seems thoughtful, even gives her advice about being careful, needing secrecy. He acts like he's taking her seriously.
And then the final twist, the ultimate betrayal. Stark confesses he's not just aware of it all, he's the mastermind.
Yeah.
And his justification, it's just bone-chilling. He frames the whole horrific operation as like a necessary evil for medical progress. Compares himself to Leonardo da Vinci, Copernicus, people who broke the rules for advancement.
Yeah, his reasoning lays bare this totally warped ethical view. He argues the current organ donation laws are stupid, outdated, legal mumbo-jumbo, letting good organs go to waste while people die waiting. He actually says they need this source of data, these living, comatose bodies, to make huge breakthroughs in transplants, in treating diseases. It's utilitarianism gone mad. Individual lives are just expendable sacrifice for what he sees as this greater scientific good. It's terrifying.
So Susan's whole journey through the hospital cover-ups, the personal threats, and finally uncovering this awful, ethically bankrupt scheme, it really shows her resilience, doesn't it? Her determination, driven by that core belief that you can find the truth if you just keep looking, even when everything and everyone is against you.
Absolutely. And the book leaves you asking some really tough questions. What does it say about trusting big, powerful institutions like hospitals? Where should the lines be drawn for science and medicine? How much can ambition or this idea of progress warp people's ethics? Who gets to decide when the cost is too high?
Yeah, exactly. These are the sorts of big ideas that stick with you, that make you think beyond just the plot of the story.
And that kind of deeper analysis, using AI to prompt critical thinking about books, that's something you can find more of over on our YouTube channel, Mindful Moments.
Yeah.
And naturally, keep exploring our podcast for more discussions like this, looking into other fascinating books and ideas that make you think.
We really hope this exploration of Coma got you thinking. If you found it interesting, maybe consider subscribing so you catch our future discussions. And if you know someone else who'd find this compelling, please share it with them. If you want to read or reread Robin Cook's Coma yourself, there's a link to purchase it in the show notes.
And always, just keep questioning things. Engage critically with the world, with the information you get, with the systems you're part of.
So thinking about Stark's warp's logic and that whole theme in the book about technology, maybe getting ahead of our laws and ethics, it leaves you with this final thought, doesn't it? If the rules haven't caught up to what's possible medically, what other lines might be getting crossed right now in the name of progress? And who gets to decide what price is acceptable? That's a question that really lingers.